What's going on, people? This is John Epiphany back with another sports reaction. Before the start of the video, just remember to like and subscribe. And also, I want to give a special shout out to my guy, Kofi Oamed. He wanted to hear a fighter's perspective on the Roy Jones versus Mike Tyson fight. And here we go. And now on to the breakdown between Mike Tyson and Roy Jones Jr. A fight that nobody expected that we ever get to see after the initial fight was canceled back in 2003 when Roy Jones was getting ready to move up to fight heavyweights and then eventually won the heavyweight crown so many years ago. Now, I'm pretty sure a lot of people are expecting this to just be a straight wash, either old former boxing fans from the past or new boxing fans that just got into the sport. They're just looking at everything from the eye test. Now, from the eye test, that tells you by looking at each other's primes, especially Mike Tyson being a naturally bigger opponent, automatically you're going to give it to Mike Tyson right there. Now, you can say Roy Jones is much faster than Tyson, but Tyson had the speed of a middleweight. And also, of course, if you know Roy Jones Jr., you know his career, especially the first 13 years of his career, the man had the speed of a featherweight. So this is going to be actually a lot closer fight than people actually think that it is going to be. Now, like I said before, if you just base it strictly off the eye test, with Tyson being the naturally bigger fighter, natural heavyweight, fought heavyweight his entire career. Roy Jones only fighting heavyweight technically one time in his career, and then staying around the super middleweight, light heavyweight division between most of his career. Of course, I would be like, man, Mike Tyson is going to kill him, but Roy Jones has also been at heavyweight a little bit longer now, I guess more naturally, not because you don't have to lose the weight, because a lot of people don't really know that a lot of the guys that really fight at 160, 170, 180, most of those guys is literally walking around between 195 pounds to about 225 pounds, and then they lose their weight to fight at a smaller weight. But when you built like Tyson, you don't have to necessarily lose that weight and go down to a smaller weight class, even though Mike Tyson could have dropped down to a smaller weight class at that time and just dominated the cruiserweight division. But enough of the what ifs that could have happened and everything else. We're talking about this fight specifically. Now, Mike Tyson at age 54, he hasn't fought since 2005, around the time he was 40 years old. Roy Jones hasn't fought since 2018. So Roy Jones right there already has the advantage over Iron Mike Tyson, with just now being retired February 2018. So with Roy Jones retiring in 2018, it's not going to take him as long as it took Tyson just to basically get into fight shape. And he's going to have a very good advantage, especially in the leg department. If Roy Jones can just avoid those bombs early, the first few rounds, and Tyson gasses himself out, then this is definitely going to be interesting. And Roy Jones is going to have the advantage because he did fight 2 years ago, which helps any boxer that has fought before will definitely let you know it's better to have a 2-year layoff, even though that's bad as well, compared to a 15-year layoff that Tyson also had as well. Now, of course, one of the main things Tyson is definitely going to have over Roy Jones Jr., and that's the aggression and the power department. Tyson, we all know, always been a very aggressive boxer, but I'm pretty sure a lot of people don't really look too deep into Mike Tyson. They just look at him as just being a knockout artist, when the earlier Mike Tyson, the one from 1985 to 1990, was more of a tactician. He still was that bulldog, but he was a tactician. He used his jab a lot more, which is way more effective than always throwing wild hooks and uppercuts, something that Roy Jones does. With Tyson initiating that jab as much as he does, if he does that, compared to what he did in the 80s and somewhat in the 90s, then Tyson will definitely have the advantage, because Roy Jones Jr. overall was never really had a very good jab. He never really used his jab because he has so many God-gift abilities to be able to just move out of place. And when I say move out of place, I mainly mean constant head movement. He didn't really use his legs to move out the way. It was mainly head movement, make you move, and make you miss. And then the second time around, he's going to do the exact same move, make you miss. And then after that, counter either with a straight right hand over the top or a lunging left hook, which is something that we all know that Roy Jones was fully capable of doing. But at 51 years old, will he be able to do it now against Mike Tyson? And will he be able to sustain that at 51 years old? Now, luckily, Mike Tyson is 3 years older than him and has had a way longer layoff. So Roy Jones is a smart businessman. That's the reason why he wanted the fight to be a lot sooner in September, because he knows already with having a limited training camp and everything else, he would definitely have the advantage over Mike Tyson. But with it getting pushed back, this gives Mike Tyson even bigger advantage to be able to get just a tad bit closer to Roy Jones as in the state that he is in right now. Now, with all those things being said, in order for Tyson to really have the advantage, because like I said before, they both in their 50s, Tyson is going to have to beat him up early. That may not only hit him in the head, no matter also hit him in the body, but Mike Tyson's gonna have to beat up Roy Jones Jr.'s arms. He's gonna have to beat up his entire upper body, hit whatever is available. Because Tyson, I'm pretty sure Tyson's a lot smarter than he was 15 years ago. He's gonna know already, I got so many rounds in me, a good 5, 6. So he's gonna have to take advantage of that and to make sure to get Roy Jones Jr. down to his level. He's going to have to beat that man arms up, beat up his body, everything that he can, just to weaken Roy Jones enough to a point that once it get into the later rounds, the 6, 7, and 8 round, Roy Jones will be slowed down just enough for Tyson to be able to take advantage in those later rounds once he starts to gas out as well, due to the fact that he hasn't fought in 15 years. A lot of people don't really realize how tough that is, not to do nothing for 15 years. Be out of shape for 15 years and then come back and then try to go 100% strong like Tyson has basically been doing. He already said before, after he did that little 20-second video when he said he was back, the man was in bed for 6 weeks. So this has been a very long journey for Tyson alone just to be able to come back and fight in a fight like this. Now, a lot of people was wondering, is this Tyson's last dance? Or is this his first blood since coming back to boxing? Pretty sure Tyson is not going to fight again after this. If he does, it's going to be nothing more than exhibitions. High money exhibitions. He's not going to fight for no titles or nothing like that. That's long gone. So for anybody that's even thinking that's over with. That the Tyson that we watched growing up as kids and everything else is gone. I got the chance to watch mainly the 1990s Tyson. I didn't get a chance to catch the 80s because during his reign I wasn't even born, and him and my mother is the same age. So yeah, you can see how that basically translates right there with the timeline of me being born 89 and Tyson fighting between 1985 to 1990. Only was able to catch his second career from 95 on through. Now, Roy, on the other hand, I was able to catch him fighting from 95 all the way until basically he damn near retired. So I was able to see a lot of his undefeated streak going into 2003 when he beat Andy Ruiz. He beat Tarver the first time, barely, after he came down from heavyweight, and then everything else that happened to him after that. Sad, but it is what it is. He should have retired back then. But basically, I do believe that Tyson is going to get the victory in this fight. And that's for this reason alone. Because Tyson is the natural aggressor. And Tyson has been known to throw way more punches in the fight than Roy Jones Jr. Roy Jones don't really throw a lot of punches. He's never been known to throw a lot of punches throughout a fight. He might throw a lot of punches in a round, maybe 2 rounds. But that usually accommodate for the last 3 rounds that he didn't throw a lot of punches, and he usually just made the guy miss and hit him with 1 or 2 punches, basically pot shotting him the entire fight. And sitting there trying to pot shot with Tyson is not a good thing for Roy Jones Jr. Plus, on top of that, he never was the guy to really use his legs to really move around like that, unless he was basically aiming to hit you with a counter. Other than that, Roy Jones will mainly just stand in front of you. And that right there can definitely get him hurt going against a fighter like Mike Tyson. And then in this day and age, Tyson definitely gonna be able to take advantage of that. Now, if this was back in 2003, a couple of years before Tyson retired, and when Roy Jones was about 35 years old and Tyson was 38, when Roy Jones had moved up to heavyweight, Roy Jones possibly would have just dismantled Tyson. Because at that time, Roy Jones had just put on a weight. He just wound up whooping Ruiz. He was supposed to fight Tyson at that time. Tyson was not the fighter that he was, and Roy Jones was still basically the pound for pound king. He just got his title for being the best boxer of the 1990s at that time. Just got awarded all these awards. So definitely at that time, Tyson would have got his ass broke off at that time. But at this time, with both fighters taking time off, Tyson basically healing up after taking off 15 years, and Roy Jones basically still grinding. That's what's going to keep this fight a lot closer than a lot of people think it will. But Tyson will definitely take this fight in the end. And the reason for that is because styles make fights. With Tyson peekaboo style and also that unique style that Roy Jones has, if they both in their prime, Roy Jones possibly get the win if he does not decide to stand in front of Tyson and try to trade with him, which is something that I feel like Roy Jones is going to do early on to try to let Tyson know that he ain't no bitch, he ain't going nowhere. That's not the best thing for Roy to do. The best thing for him to do is to constantly pop out the jab and constantly move his legs. But the thing is, Roy Jones, like I said, is not known as a big-time jabber. The last time he really used the jab in the fight that I saw was against John Ruiz, who was also a bigger fighter than him. But John Ruiz did not have the speed that Tyson does, have the explosiveness that Tyson also has as well. And Tyson does not have those limitations that John Ruiz had. Former heavyweight champion, also beat Holyfield as well. A lot of people probably like, what? Yeah, that's the guy that beat Holyfield then and before then. Man, I can go deep and deeper. A guy that got knocked out by David Tua, who wound up losing to Lennox Lewis, who also Lennox Lewis beat Holyfield as well. But like I said, that's another story for another time. This is about Roy Jones and Mike Tyson. But basically, with Tyson having the strength advantage, speed is probably leveled out about even right now. Footwork, natural boxing technique over Roy Jones Jr. The main thing that Roy had over Tyson was just athleticism, pure athleticism. And we all know that Roy do not have that anymore. At most, he'd be able to keep it up probably 4-5 rounds. And because this is an 8-round fight, that's all he really has to do is keep that up for that and hope that Tyson wears down. If that does happen, then Roy can take this fight and win a unanimous decision. But if Tyson is basically able to give it to Roy early, I mean the first 3-4 rounds, beat up Roy, hit everything that he can, even doing those little twerks that the old school fighters taught most fighters to punch around the hip, hit around the hips to slow down the faster fight and everything. If Tyson is able to do stuff like that, then he is definitely getting his victory over Roy. All right, people, this is John Pipney back with another sports reaction, talking about Roy Jones Jr. versus Mike Tyson, which is tonight, later on tonight. And I just can't wait to see the fight. I can't wait to check it out and see how both of these old school warriors basically perform, these gladiators. I just got to see it, man. I know everyone else is too. All right, people, peace out.